Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Premier League Show brought to you by the folks here at American Scouser TV. I am Gally, and I am coming to you live from Springfield, Massachusetts, where I will be shortly joined by our co-host, Matus, from Chicago. He is running a little late in that Chicago traffic on his way home from work tonight. So we're going to get to all the fantasy Premier League news. We're going to talk about the double match weeks in 29 and the recently introduced double game week for match week 34. And, well, if you're not on time, you might as well be fashionably late.
Let's do this. I'm here.
I ran interference for a minute, and by interference, I mean my Wi-Fi was so spotty that I thought we weren't going to be able to pull this show off. I love when Xfinity tells me every 15 minutes that I'm going to have an outage tomorrow. And on a day that I was planning to work completely from home in the morning, and they're like, hey, guess what? You know that huge bill you have every month that you can't stomach as you pay it, and you question why you didn't cut the cord faster? Find a new internet provider too. But that's not why we join each other each Thursday night. We join to talk a little bit about, well, fantasy football and probably share tips and tricks that others should disagree with and not listen to. But before we do that, absolutely listen when we say this. Jump in, get in, join our Discord channel. We have tons of communication throughout the week, little less during the international breaks, which is kind of a nice relief, actually. I think my phone carries a charge and a battery longer during the international break because I'm not getting as many ridiculous updates or notifications about comments around transfers and the under 21 team and the women's side and what's happening on some TV program I'm not even watching. So if you're looking for a good group of folks to get involved with, we'll post the link to our Discord channel a little later during the show. And go ahead, jump in, get on the server. If you're already familiar with Discord, you know it's something that's easy to manage. You can mute channels, you can create discussions, but it's a great way to get engaged. And if anything, I know folks that just love it for the plain fact that it's like being in a pub watching matches, especially if you're someone who maybe isn't able to get out and find the time to watch matches live with other folks. So we will get that posted up in the chat. Before we start up the show, check in with you. How's your last couple weeks? What have you done during this international break? Have you taken a little time out for yourself? What's been going on in your footy world?
My footy world, I kind of moved some interest off everything, and I kind of put a little bit into MLS because I've been doing a little bit more into MLS recently, just because I do absolutely love being able to have a geographical, personal connection to a club. As wonderful as it's been to support Liverpool my entire life, what it feels like. Not being able to, I have never attended an actual match. So for me, until I'm able to do that, I feel like I'm always going to be missing something. So I kind of make up for that by going to Chicago Fire games, even though they're absolutely dreadful. So I've kind of been paying more attention to the MLS things. I want to still do some fantasy. So I've been doing the MLS fantasy, and I'm in the top 100 out of all MLS fantasy players. Granted, there's only 13,000 of us, but top 100 is something that I'm happy about.
It's actually really, really good, man. That's a solid. I kind of like the game. I don't play it myself. I feel like in some ways I'm so inundated with my own EPL fantasy teams that I find trying to get into another game and understand the players. I too like the MLS, and I fought it for a long time. I won't lie. Even after I've supported Liverpool all my life. I think the first match I watched was like a wide world of sports event. I think it was probably an FA Cup final at some point in the 80s because that was the one match you could get on live television here in America. And I fell in love with the club. I fell in love with the culture, but I really didn't follow it probably week to week until the last like 10 to 12 years, when the Premier League really took off. Honestly, let's be real. It was like after the Aguero moment and the whole kind of nostalgia that came with it. And it was great for the game, and it was great for me. I've really enjoyed it. I don't hide it. I don't kind of shy away from it. But that whole time I fought the MLS, and I actually fought our geographical local team. So when I started watching, I was trying to pick a team in the MLS and not have it be the New England Revolution. And I'm serious when I say this. Like I tried watching Red Bulls, thinking I could go down there. They have a nice stadium. I was never going to root for any team that plays at Yankee Stadium, so you can go fuck yourself right there. So I looked at all these different teams. There was a little period I kind of rooted for Sporting KC just because they had a cool stadium and it seemed like it was fun. But then I thought to myself, if I ever take a long weekend, I really don't want that to be to Kansas City, Kansas, under any circumstance. So, and Nashville didn't exist yet, so there was no reason to pick them. But I ended up coming full circle with the Revolution, and I've become a really big Revolution supporter now, actually. I've met a lot of really great people here locally. They have an outstanding fan base. I mean, they're one of the original teams. They play in a terrible, terrible stadium, and that's their biggest problem. I've always said I think that the New England Revolution, if they were the Boston Revolution and were in downtown Boston, like on the seaport, and you could get to it on the T, they would absolutely start to dominate some levels of Boston sports, which is kind of crazy when they're the betting favorites to win the NBA Finals and the NHL Stanley Cup.
Right.
But I think that the Revs would have a real shot because there's a clamor in the city for the team. And more importantly, we all know, like, it's a younger generation following soccer in the United States. And they have all the colleges. I just think they would just kill it. But, to be fair, as much as I hate the New England Patriots, which was part of the reason I never wanted to be a Revs fan, the Crafts are smart business people. And if they thought they could make that much money in Boston, they would. But they understand they already own the stadium that they play in. Right. And they still sell 25, 30,000 seats every night, even if it looks like it's empty because it's a 65,000, football stadium. And that's the same, right, with your Fire. You guys still play at the stadium?
They used to, so they played at Soldier Field for a long time. Then they moved out to Bridgeview, which is kind of a farther suburb from Chicago, and they had their own stadium, Toyota Park, which was a pretty stadium, but you had a lot of people hate going over there because it wasn't Chicago specifically. So they moved back to Soldier Field permanently last year. And it's the same situation. It's a $70,000 seat capacity stadium, and they get maybe all of 6,000 or 7,000 people to go some nights. So it is a really empty stadium, but you can sit front row behind the goal for $35. And that's some of the best times I have is just sitting there right behind the goal for $35. You cannot beat it. I think we may have.
Yeah. One of the real. Oh, do we freeze
there,
for
you're
a
good.
second
You're
there?
Good. You're good. Yep. We lost you, but you're back.
Sorry about that. Honestly, I went to the playoff game against the semifinals against New York 2 years ago at the Rev Stadium. And it honestly is one of like the top 5 or 10 sporting events I've ever been to in my whole life. Like, you had a goal late to tie the match, and then you go to extra time, you give up the goal. Then they score in stoppage time to send it to penalties. And unfortunately, they lose on penalties, and they were right in front of us at the, I sit down in what they call the fort end at the New England matches. It was such a great match. And I think I've said this before, like, I went to a World Series game. I've actually seen a Stanley Cup. I was in the building when the Bruins came back down 4-1 against the Leafs with 3 minutes to go in Game 7, and then went on to win the Stanley Cup, their only Stanley Cup of my lifetime. So, like, I've seen some great sporting events live, let alone almost seeing Liverpool win the league last year on the last day of the year. And this was right up there, though. It was, and not just from the game and what transpired on the pitch, but the actual atmosphere inside the stadium. So, a lot of credit there. But we do this as a fantasy show to talk about the Premier League, so we'll get right into it like we usually do. We'll take a look here to start at our American Scouser Cup standings. Pep had a little bit of a down week this week. Only 46 points. Saw a red arrow, dropped a few thousand spots. I think he's down somewhere in the 2,200 range. Still just amazing work by him. Should be really proud. I will say when I look every week now at his side when the lineups get released, almost because I'm excited to see what could he do. I didn't love a -4 to start last week. I hate anyone who listens to this show knows how much I loathe negative point deductions if you don't believe you're going to get a positive actual net return. And I think on a week where we were all playing a shortened side, if not a lesser side from a talent standpoint, taking a -4 last week, I think was a really big gamble. And I think it's what managers that are in the top 200,000 trying to get into the top 100,000 should be doing. I think if you're in the top 1,000 of the game, you shouldn't be giving up 500 to 2,000 spots. Yeah. And, that's what a -4 does to you. It drops you basically about 180,000 spots at this point. And, when you look at the history of this game, the people who win it, and when I say the people who win it, I really mean the people who are in the top 10,000. They average between 8 and 16 total negative points a season. You just don't take them. There has to be a real strategy. And I think it's a good week to talk about hits because I think in double game weeks is when people think I can take a -8 this week. I can take a -12. But I have these double matches. It is really, really hard to make up 12 points. In this game, if you don't have a Saka moment or, Son comes on as a sub and gets a hat trick, it's really, really hard to make up that kind of a hit. So, again, great job by everyone here in our top 10 of our American Scouser Cup. Excited to see where this goes in the next 2 or 3 weeks because the actual cup competition starts. For those of you who are newer to this game and haven't been paying attention, every single league you're in also has a traditional style head-to-head cup final that basically just pits you against other players head-to-head, leading down to one champion. So we will have a prize for the person who wins the overall standings, which it would take some real hard work for William not to get that wonderful American Scouser package sent to him. But we'll also have a prize for the actual head-to-head cup winner. So even if you're doing terrible, even if you rank somewhere in the bottom 10%, you can put your side together from match week 31 forward and find yourself into, hopefully, one of our knockout round cup matches. And I'm just hoping that the luck of the balls fall inside the cauldron and they pull the two of us head-to-head at some point. That would be a lot of fun if the two co-hosts of this podcast were actually going head-to-head at some point in the near future, other than in the league in which I continue to just shit the bed. So while we talk about head-to-heads, we'll look here at the American Scouser Contributor League. Don't know if we just lost Matus there. I think he had to jump off for a moment. He'll be back in a second. So as we look at our head-to-heads from game week 28, no real surprises. Matus keeps rolling. BJ is still putting up big numbers week in and week out, which is really great. We had an awesome head-to-head matchup between Scott and Chris Strain, with Scott just kind of pipping it at the end. And, of course, like usual, the Gallavins went ahead and had themselves a head-to-head matchup, which ends the same way every single head-to-head matchup at the Galvin household happens, with Kelly coming out on top.
As is tradition.
It is tradition. And I knew I would be in trouble when she told me she was going to free hit. I knew she had to free hit because she had like 6 or 7 players not playing. Like she just had a complete dead blank week. I personally was able to go into the week, make one transfer, save a transfer, and roll it over. People were kind of clowning on me in some of the other talk groups I'm in. Like, and we'll get to our teams later with the whole idea of like, you had 2 free transfers. Why did you start a bench player? But ultimately, I didn't want to waste a transfer this week to bring back one of my Brighton assets or Rashford. Which I think are imperative to have this week. So I started 10 players. You know, if I captain the right player, if I make a different move, everything changes. And it was a brilliant week for me. You know, it was a tough one. Didn't pull out the clean sheets I wanted. And once again, just kind of let down by some of my players. But as we look at the standings, you are still sitting on top with the 6-point lead. Kelly held true and keeps herself close. She still really can't understand how she lost to VJ 2 weeks ago. It's really it's like bothering her. It's just irking her at all levels. Guy showed up and decided to make 3 transfers in 1 week and actually rotate his team. And then he beats Kelly and then shows up and lays another egg the following week against you. So it's just amazing. It's just par for the course.
I won't say that I kind of, asked him not to check his team, but,
It's a smart play. I am at the point now where I am going to start bartering with Timuchin to see if he will just pay attention just when he plays you.
Are you going to make the Champions League spot here, you think?
Will I get into the top 4? Probably not. But don't forget, this is an American-style head-to-head fantasy football league. So there is bullshit playoffs coming to this, man. So you don't just get to run this thing to the end and win. You have to run this thing to the end, qualify into the last 3 weeks of the season, which are a head-to-head style with like a Super Bowl the last week. So you could still blow this, my friend.
I could all of my chips to be
and in many ways, I could still win it. Well, that's the funny part. I asked Kelly that, like, what are your thoughts? And she almost didn't want to use her free hit last week because she was like, if I could get to the last week of the year and have my free hit, I could just go at it.
Yeah.
But then I reminded her that we have playoffs. And she thought, oh, well, in that case, I need to just make sure that, and no joke, she was like, I need to just make sure I'm in the bracket that has to play you. And I was like, why is that? She's like, because you can't ever beat me. I was like, man, you're right and terrible. So before we start looking at sides and talking about this coming week, which is a big week, let's take a look at the blank game week 28 and take a quick look here at the overall top side. Did not have a lot of these players in my setup. Did you?
I had Saka and Saka.
Yeah, I had Saka and Saka as well. And though I said Saka's name twice, I wasn't smart enough to keep the captain's armband on him, which I did have earlier in the week, and then switched it off to Harry Kane. Yeah, that worked well.
It was just so hard to think of what was going to happen during that Arsenal match. It just, I don't know. For me, I don't think anyone really thought about captaining any Arsenal players for some reason. I guess we probably should have. Hindsight, 2020 being, of course, always the best. But I don't think many people even considered that at the time. So I don't know if it's necessarily, the wrong. It obviously is a wrong choice, but it wasn't the wrong choice at the moment,
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind captaining Harry Kane, a guy who is second or third overall in the entire game in points earned, second for strikers, and has been just, if it wasn't for Haaland, people would be talking about this being like a banner Kane season in fantasy. So he easily could have had a hat trick against Southampton, and then I'd be sitting here saying, "Oh, brilliant move by me."
Yeah.
Do I wish I'd captained Saka? I really do, because it would have made a huge movement in the overall standings. Obviously, everything here, you have the late goal by Porro for Spurs, which basically just gave you a Spurs asset. You have the double, both the clean sheet and the goal for Mings obviously is huge in the Villa match, or the assist he got. So you really look at that. I think the others like Decore, Walcott, Douglas Luiz, Jensen, they're not in anybody's team. Adams, like Isak.
There's a good shout
real
there.
There's a real shout there to why he is a real differential, and I think he is a prime target for this double game week, along with like Kai Havertz and João Felix. If you're looking for a differential, because I think we all know, majority of people are going to be on some form of Kane, Holland, Tony, Watkins, like in this double game week, even with Holland and Kane only playing single game weeks. But let's do what we always do and take a look here at the transfers in for this week. I guess somewhat of a little shock, just that, again, we talk about this every week. Like, I know people got off them because it was a free hit, or maybe they just didn't have them originally, but how anyone got to this point without already having Matoma is kind of a shock to me. What of this screen jumps out at you the most? Is it Isak over Fernandez? Is it people putting this much faith in Fernandez, even with Casemiro's potential ban?
I want to say that the Fernandez is just one of those feelings of having a premium midfielder, and Bruno being the choice between Bruno, Mo, and Kevin De Bruyne for that slot there. And I think with United's fixtures coming up, I know they play worse defensively without Casemiro, but offensively they're still fine. And Bruno has been part of that build-up for majority of the season now, and he's kind of going back to fantasy-wise the Bruno that we liked, a couple of years ago.
Pre-Ronaldo.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was the Bruno that you had to have. You weren't going to go off Bruno, and then to see the possibility of him going back to that. And you lose a point for the clean sheet, whatever. You're not banking on clean sheets from your mids. Like that's not why you're getting them in. So I don't think it's too much of a worry that Casemiro won't be in for a bit. Other than that, the rest of it makes sense because, I don't have Matoma, but that's because I had McAllister, and I didn't want two Brighton mids. I know a lot of people had two Brighton mids. Some even tripled up on Brighton mids with March, Matoma, McAllister. I don't have Matomas personally, but I can see why people want to go back to that now with Brighton not having a blank anymore. And like you mentioned earlier, Isak is a possible great shot for the differential in that forward slot if you want to get off of the likes of Holland, Darwin, or Holland, Kane, Watkins, Tony situation.
Any surprise in Shaw being included? I understand that he's really has been a revelation this year. He's been really good. And to be fair to the guy, he's been really good since like the Euros 2 years ago. And he was great last year too. For my money, he was United's player of the year last year. I know they gave the award to Fernandez, but I think Shaw was actually the best of the bunch over the last 12 to 18 months at United. A little shocked that he's getting this much run just because I could see some rotation there. I mean, United really looks tired. Like, they're genuinely have played since the World Cup.
Yeah.
Every single midweek. So that makes me a little worried there. Are you thinking of making moves to any of these players?
No, I'm not bringing any of these players on to my team. Are you?
Interesting. Thinking about it, yeah, at least one. I mean, we'll get to our thoughts around moves. I am contemplating bringing in Fernandez just because you have the double here. Yes, you have the blank, but then you have the double in 34, which is another really good one. So, like, you're looking at basically picking up 2 extra fixtures over 4, and there's still another United match to be scheduled. So there's a chance at even a possible triple up at some point in a single match week. So I'm considering Fernandez, and I've also had some considerations over Isak. But if I did the Isak move, it would be moving to Isak and moving and freeing up even more funds so that I would be able to take Fernandez up to Mo.
Yeah,
and we'll talk a little bit about that. I don't love Liverpool assets this double game week, but I really love them in 34.
Yes.
So I'm starting to consider whether or not you buy them now. But then again, I also have the struggle of it's Liverpool. And you just don't know. I mean, I know Mo's going to play.
That's yeah.
You really don't know which player you're going to get.
Yeah, and I get that. I just think if we compare Liverpool's fixtures over the next 6 game weeks compared to Manchester United's fixtures, if you have the funds, I don't think you can go Fernandez over Mo. If you have that extra money and you can use it and you have it, comparing the fixtures, it doesn't make sense for me to go Fernandez because we know Mo's going to go 90 every single match. He is the most locked in 90-minute player on the team besides Alisson. And so we know he's going to get those minutes. Bruno might be rotated a little bit. Like you said, Manchester United's tired. They've been playing so many games since the World Cup. And I fear that there's going to be a little bit more rotation. Plus you get that blank in 31. And the double for Liverpool in 34 looks so much better than United. It's not like maybe not miles better, but you have Tottenham at home and Fulham at home for Liverpool up against Villa at home and Brighton away for United. The Brighton away might be a terrible fixture for Bruno. And I think when you look at the rest of the fixtures, if you have the funds, for me, it makes sense to go Mo over because of just the locked in 90 every week.
So we look at the players that came in this week. Let's take a look at some of the players going out. No surprise with Almiron still sitting in so many sides that he is a player on its way out. And obviously flagged with the red exclamation point that he's probably not going to be playing. That makes total sense. Saliba still questionable with the injury, and of course it is a time where in these big double game weeks you end up selling assets you don't want to sell, and I think that's the next 2 players. I think that's Saliba and Odegaard. Mm-hmm. I think Odegaard right now is the easiest player to move off of and move to another midfielder. And I think when you do that, you have to genuinely look at what am I looking at for this week and where do I see it going from here? Kane and Haaland, I got to be honest, it's a little shocking to see Haaland on the top 5 transfers out. Because personally, the only reason that Harry Kane would be on this list with a match against Everton is because you believe that you would be switching to Haaland.
Yeah.
That one's a little shocking to me. Like, do you think people are worried about the injury? Do you think it's just freeing up funds because there's such a big double game week? Do you think this is people doing free hits? Like, what is making someone move off of Erling Haaland at this point?
I think part of it, if we look at their upcoming fixtures, right? They've got Liverpool at home, Southampton away, Leicester at home, blank, Arsenal at home, and then the really good double with Fulham away and West Ham at home. I think the people moving off of them now are people who don't really see the need to have them the next 5 weeks and want to have those funds pushed elsewhere, maybe back into the midfield a little bit. Because honestly, looking at the fixtures, I know there's a chance he could go off and score a hat-trick in maybe 3 out of those 4 games. But I don't know if I necessarily love Liverpool, Southampton, Leicester, and Arsenal with a blank in between and investing all that money into someone up top when during that time you have a lot of good options that will be playing. And so I think maybe part of that is, like you said, it could be a free hit situation too, because we have to factor in if people are free hitting, that counts as a transfer out, and all it takes is 120,000 people out of 11 million to be on a free hit to put someone on this list. And if they're going for just this week because they want to attack this double game week for a lot of players, then that's something that we would see happen, and that makes sense. I personally, looking at that list, I'm moving off of Kane this week. We'll kind of go into that a little bit once we look at our teams, so I can understand that as well, given kind of what other players have this week. But yeah, it makes sense to me. I don't know. I wish I could know where they were moving to, is all.
Yeah, I agree. That kind of is where my logic goes to. So before we get into our teams and our plans for this week and what chips we're using, I thought it would be good to have a quick conversation here around the double game week. So obviously during this 2-week international break, we had the announcement of double game week 34, which turns out to be a pretty large double game week with, what is it, Liverpool, City, who else is doubling in 34 now?
City, Brighton, United, West Ham, Liverpool, and Fulham.
That's the 34. And obviously this week we have a much larger double game week, which offers us a bigger pool.
Yeah.
I saw some interesting kind of reasoning around why this is the right week to bench boost, why 34 is the right week to bench boost, the pros and cons. Other than the fact that to really maximize the number of doubles, it would require probably selling some Arsenal assets that maybe people aren't ready to move off of. Can you see a really logical reason to do this in 34 other than in 29?
Yeah, if you still have your wild card, I think 34 is going to be a fantastic double game week to wild card into, because then you can kind of have the rest of those 4 weeks lined up to whatever direction you want to go in. I think that's the only reason why I would see someone double up or do the bench boost in 34 or set up for that, because like we talked about weeks ago, especially in the second half of the season, you want to wild card into a position where you are able to use a chip after that wild card for the team that you're getting in. Otherwise, you're just wild carding for the sake of wild carding, and that's not always the best strategy. Sure, it might pay off for that week alone, but if you only look at it from that week alone, you're going to miss out on a lot of points the following weeks. So for a lot of people like myself who wild carded specifically in 25 or 26 or whatever the case was to bench boost in 29, I'm not going to change that because that's what I wanted to do. And in my head, I'm thinking, if I go away from that, I'm going to do what I've been doing all year and just not listening to what I've been wanting to do and listening to my gut. So I'm just going to stay on track to what I plan to do. I'm really fortunate where, excuse me, all my players, I don't have any flags besides Rashford. He's going to play. It's fine. And so I'm not in a position where I need to make a move at all. So I can still capitalize the bench boost that I wanted to use back when I wildcarded, because that was why I did it. I think if you have the luxury of being able to wildcard later still, then 34 is going to be great to attack, because then you can kind of focus on which teams you want to attack with that wild card for a potential bench boost. Because the pool is so much smaller in 34 than it is in 29, you don't have to feel overwhelmed by the options, right? I feel like this week a lot of people they're stuck with not knowing which direction to go because there's so many options you can go with because so many teams are on doubles. You have everywhere from Brennan Johnson to Ollie Watkins to Darwin Nunez to Danny Ings. Like everyone's just talking about not knowing where to go with forwards because you have so many options. Whereas 34 kind of narrows it down a little bit. So I think that's the only reason I would see 34 being a potential good one to shoot for, is if you still have the chip available. For me, I'm excited about it because I still have my triple captain. So I think I'm saving my triple captain for 34. And that's kind of going to be my last Hail Mary of what's going to happen for me this year is going to end up on that week. And that's going to be it.
Yeah, I like that shout, especially, I mean, you could go Holland or even Mo, depending on which team's in better form for your triple captain. I still come back to I'm so happy that when I used it, it worked and I got a 20-point match out of Rashford, because if I hadn't, I'd be frustrated and I'd be kicking myself. I'm actually thinking of I'm going to try to figure out a way to navigate the blank game week without using the free hit. And I'm thinking about free hitting in 34.
That's also
because
a good strategy.
I think 34 is a week where you genuinely want like 3 Liverpool, 3 City, 3 Brighton, and literally just the best 2 other players playing single match weeks. Like
2 United.
And 2 Uniteds, and just set. and literally go at it and try to just, and it's almost like a double bench boost.
Sure.
You're not playing your bench, but you can also use that bench to know I'm playing 11 guys that are going to get 2 matches, and all are going to feature in both matches. So I can literally put fodder on the bench.
Yep.
And just fill it with the creme de la creme of match week 34. I am definitely going to bench boost. While we, I just wanted to have that idea, that conversation for the listeners to get an idea what their thoughts were or what your thoughts were. And then let's go ahead and take a look at your team from last week. So before we talk about your moves for this week, give me your overview from last week. What you hated, what you loved. I mean, you were lucky, right? You picked up the extra point or 2 over the safety score, so you were able to see a green arrow. It was subtle, but it was green.
Yeah, hey, we'll take any sort of green at this point. I mean, 7% up. That's a decent amount. 140,000. I'll take it. Obviously, the biggest mistake you guys can see is that mother person on with the C on his shirt. I messaged you. I was like, I'm doing something really crazy with my captaincy this week. And in hindsight, if I put it on any of my midfielders, I'd be so much happier right now. I could have put it on Madison and would have been absolutely fine with that. Obviously, Saka would have been amazing. But for some reason, I had so much faith in Chilwell last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever, that it propelled me to do something.
We have dropped. Here he comes back.
It was such a stupid decision that my computer was like, all right, you're done talking about it. This is it. You get no more on this. Just stop, give it over to Gally. And I think that's pretty much where I end because I don't have anything else to say about that.
Yeah, it was a brutal one. I felt for you. When you said that, I thought, honestly, you might be like dropping it on Watkins or Mbeumo or like literally Madison. Like that was where I thought you were going. Yeah. When I logged in and saw that you had put it on Chilwell after you had your ass burnt by a Estupiñán the week before, I thought to myself, he's not doing this again. He is not captaining an attacking defender who's going to give up a goal and lose. Ay, ay, ay. That was a tough one. Talk to me about what you're thinking for this week. So obviously this is your side.
Yep.
You have 1 transfer or 2?
I have 1.
Okay.
Yep.
And are you making, but you're moving off Kane, so I'm assuming you're making 2.
No.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm moving down from Kane to Darwin. And then I'm going to, at that point, then I'll have every player in my starting lineup on a double game week. And then my bench is going to be full of Arsenal players for the bench boost. So I'm going to do Raya, Saka, Zinchenko, Martinelli on the bench, do the bench boost, and keep that money in the bank that I take from Kane down to Darwin. I'll have, I think it's like 6.5 million then. And then from there, I'm going to start navigating a little bit to try and get around the blank a little bit better, but then to also set up for 34 with a little bit of extra money. So that's where I'm at. I like Kane long term, but Everton away right now, Goodison Park, I would rather just take my chance with a Darwin double against City and Chelsea than Kane at Everton, and that's kind of where I stand. I like the rest of my team setup. I like having the Brighton assets. I like Mbeumo still, even though he hasn't really returned for me. If Tony picks up 1 yellow, he's gone for the next game. So there's a chance that Mbeumo will be a bigger focal point in that offense. So I like where I'm at. I will not be captaining Chilwell, though. I think this week is very interesting because from what I've seen, what I've read, captaincy is all over the place. There isn't a single player that a lot of, let's say, the top 10K or the hive mind is really going for. It's a little all over the place. So I'm interested to see where people end up putting their captaincy on. I am right now in between Madison and Rashford is where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the captaincy is going to be a huge pull for this week. If Newcastle had been as staunch defensively as they had been earlier in the season, I would be a little more weary of Rashford. I'm almost starting to feel like he is the pick, and I think that's the one that I've seen the most clamor for.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some people out there arguing that, if Haaland starts, he'll score 2 against Liverpool and get max bonus points. I personally, Haaland has not done great against the big opponents. He hasn't played well against Liverpool in the few matches that they've played against City. Van Dijk has a physical presence. Konate is an actual body who can kind of battle him off and has the pace with him. And then no Foden. I think you've seen the best of Erling Haaland when Phil Foden has been at his best. And
it's an
Foden
early
being
game.
Out,
it's an early game
another
after
early
international
match.
break.
Yep. So I don't love either teams, honestly. Like, it's crazy. I look at your side. You don't have a City player and you don't have a Liverpool player. In a moment, we're going to look at my team, and you're going to see that I don't have a City player or a Liverpool player. It's probably why we're not very good at this game. But it is the reason why I think we're coming into this with kind of an open mind. So I don't hate the move, bringing Kane down to a lower striker and really attacking it. I do question sometimes leaving that much money in the bank.
Sure.
During a double game week when you could spread funds around, but not a bad shout. And I'll be interested to see where you lay that captaincy. And I hope I don't pick the same one because over the last few weeks, it's not a side I want to be on. So I had a little bit of the red arrow last week. It was only a 2% drop, which didn't bother me. I mean, I dropped less than 10,000 spots. That's not really killer. I was right there. Had I captained Saka or, made the extra transfer, I was good with Kane and Watkins. The goals just crushed me. Like, getting no clean sheets out of that back four and that keeper was really, really brutal for me. I think that was probably the most disappointing and disheartening part was Arsenal conceding, honestly, because it just really hurt. It was a 6-point drop. It also took Gabriel out of bonus points. I obviously held on to my bench players in Rashford, so that's what it is. I have 2 free transfers going into this week. And I can't lie, there's part of me that's tempted to make the triple transfer and go with the -4 because I am bench boosting.
Mm-hmm.
So like you, my plan is to have Saka and Gabriel on the bench. It pains me to say I'll probably be one of the masses that will be transferring out of Odegaard this week. It just, in this setup and this side, it makes the most sense.
Yeah.
I can right now go Odegaard all the way up to Fernandez if I want to. I could then make a move. I won't lie. I'm a little torn. I hate the idea of using a free transfer to move off a player with a double match week. But I honestly don't love Brentford's fixtures. So there's part of me that really believes the right move for me is to go Odegaard to Fernandez and maybe me to either Chilwell, James. I don't have enough funds to bring in Trent. I'm just short there. But I could get, I could get up to Chilwell. I could get up to James if I want it. The issue with that is we start to run into the blank weeks and you're buying players that also have blanks. And that's a tough one. And of course, going Odegaard to Fernandez, I'm putting a lot of eggs in the United midfield, having Fernandez and Rashford. The other logic, and you're starting to kind of talk me into it a little bit, is I could go Odegaard to Salah if I go down from Kane. and I could go Kane to Isak.
I like that.
And then now I'm literally putting a player on my bench with a double game week. And I think it would be 13 doubles, Saka and Gabriel.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a better move there than those two moves. And I mean, I know I could still use I could take a -4 and I could upgrade someone else. I just see no reason to go off. I mean, I think Saka is just an absolute locked in requirement.
I feel like Saka, Rashford, and Trippier are the ones that I don't think will move to the end of the year. I think other players will move a lot. I think those three are safe for the rest of the year.
And I'd argue, we've talked about this before. I think he's probably one of the most underrated players in the entire Premier League. I think Gabriel has shown himself as a top-level defender, and he is the biggest goal threat that Arsenal has on any set piece.
Yeah.
So you got me tempted on the Kane thing. My only issue is if I go Kane, if I bring Kane down and I go up to Salah, I have pretty much put my eggs in the Salah basket for a run.
Well, that could be a very bountiful basket before Easter, my friend.
Well, it could be. I've also watched Liverpool.
Or they could be rotten eggs.
I've also watched Liverpool enough at 7:30 in the morning to know it might ruin my Saturday before 10.
Yeah. Something to consider, maybe. I don't know how you feel about him, because if you are going to kind of entertain the idea of going down from Kane, how do you feel about someone like Brendan Johnson this game week?
I like him, but there was talk today that Stephen Cooper, or the manager Cooper, it's Stephen Cooper, right?
Yeah.
Liam Cooper, I don't know. Something Cooper. It doesn't matter. He's not listening.
He's too high.
He made a comment today that he's not 100% fit.
Oh, well, I'll be damned. I missed that.
But it doesn't mean anything. Pep tells us every week that someone's hurt, and then they play 90 minutes.
I just really like Forest home against Wolves and then away at Leeds. I feel like those are two ultimately really high-scoring fixtures right there.
Yeah, I thought about if I were like actually free hitting or even wild carding into this week, and Kelly's thinking about it because her team's, obviously she came off the free hit. She's not in a position to bench boost. So in her world, she'll definitely either wild card or maybe even just save her bench boost for 34 and just survive with transfers. I was a little bit on the fence of like a Morgan Gibbs White. Like I think he might be a nice differential right now from Forest.
Yeah, it's too bad he's a mid.
Well, that's the problem. There's just too many better options.
Yeah.
During this match week. So, we talk a little bit here. I struggle with who to captain because I feel like I literally have 5 guys that I think you could make an argument for either of the Brighton midfielders, Rashford, and whomever I transfer Odegaard to, whether it be Fernandes or Salah.
Yeah.
I think those are all great captain shouts, and I'd almost argue that even Watkins isn't a bad captain shout. Like, I have it all across the board here, and I just I struggle a little bit with that, but I don't know that right now.
Did you know?
Look at this team and not see Rashford as the most confident player in all of it.
Did you know that Aston Villa has not been shut out since October? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it coincides with getting a manager who knows how to tactically set up a team to score.
But still, you've seen other bigger teams get shut out, and it's just I was looking at it today, and I heard someone say it, and I looked at it, and I was like, that is actually wild. I would not have guessed that.
No, but I think that comes down to the fact that, and maybe the most shocking thing is their defense has been like one of the most porous of the last like 5 match weeks. And the whole thing Unai Emery's like whole backbone is built on is making it hard for others to score and keeping people out. And while you do it. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. So when will have you already pulled the trigger and made your moves, or are you still
No, I'm
hanging
still
tight to forget to do it Friday night and then starting the team we saw on the last screenshot on Saturday morning when you wake up?
No. I'll have
No,
it.
we're past that. I mean, we only do that after shows.
Yeah, come on now, guys. Come on now. I will let you know, Odegaard did drop in price today, just now, 23 minutes ago. So I know I'm sure you still have funds, but it did drop 0.1, just so you know. I am going to lock everything in tomorrow. I'm like 100% sure I'm going to go from Kane and Darwin, bench boost, captain one of Rashford or Madison. That is what I'm doing. I just want to wait an extra 24 hours just in case any other news comes out from training about Rashford or about Darwin. That's pretty much it.
Aren't you at all nervous? I know I am a little nervous about every Liverpool asset except for Salah when it comes to rotation at this point. And I say that because, there's rumors. Obviously, Diaz was in training this week. He is going to make the bench for Saturday, even if it's just an emotional lift.
Yeah. He shouldn't play, though.
No, but he probably will because it's Klopp. You still have Bobby, and this is a prime match to give like the old bones a start because the guy actually gets up and plays well against City and his movement and his pressing. And then you have Gakpo kind of finding his way, and you still have Jota. Like, the more I talk about Liverpool's attacking assets, the more I get nervous that Darwin starts to get 25 impactful minutes from the bench every match until he starts banging in goals. And that makes me a little nervous with Darwin. Just sharing that with you, kind of from a talking standpoint.
But I think I would rather take 50 to 55 impactful minutes over these next two games than 90 minutes from Harry Kane at Everton. And I think that's ultimately how I feel anyway. So I know long term, we'll really see what starts to shake out at Liverpool. I don't expect to have more than 2 at most. I'm going to maybe want 2 for the double game week. I just don't know which 2 yet. Like you said, it'll all come down to form and who we expect to see. But as of right now, I have a gut feeling, a great feeling, that Darwin Nunez is going to have 3 returns across these 2 games. And those 3 returns might be 3 yellow cards, but there's going to be 3 of them. So we'll be fine.
I could see it happening already. I can almost like smell it now that you said it, you bastard. Yeah, I think I'm with you there too. And I don't hate the move by any means. I just talk about it like there is going to be some. Now, Liverpool doesn't have the European competitions. They don't have the domestic cups. They have no other requirements for focus. And I don't think Diaz is going to play a ton of minutes, but I do think eventually Jota will get a couple starts here, especially if they're not scoring goals and firing. Because, when fit, Diego Jota scored goals for Liverpool in his career. That's what he's done. He hasn't done a lot else, actually. I mean, he'll disappear for 80 minutes and then pop up and score a winner.
I've gone on record in our Discord and in other podcasts not being the biggest fan of Jota because I think he does really disappear most games. And then, I don't think I always get shit for it, but I honestly think that he makes himself look really good because he's able to show up and score goals when they matter. And that's a good quality to have. But I feel like sometimes the rest of it gets really overlooked.
Yeah, I've been critical at times too. I think he was but then I will also argue that it's what we missed from October of this year until now. What we needed was someone to score 3 goals that they didn't deserve to get on the run of play. But those 3 goals might have been the difference of 9 points and would have us sitting, firmly 3rd or 4th in the table right now and not staring up the barrel, trying to look outside, looking in. So I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't for Trent's down run of form, I mean, now's the time to buy Trent. He's not owned by a ton of people, so he actually offers a differential. He has 2 double game weeks in the next 6.
Yep.
It should be a time where you're stocking up on talent But, I was talking to one of our Discord members over chat today about it, and he asked me if I thought he would start both matches. And I said, if you put a gun to my head, he'll probably start both matches, but I wouldn't be 100% confident of it. But I'm even less confident that he gets 90 full minutes in both of them. Because if we have a lead against City, say in the 65th minute, Klopp's going to go to Gomez.
Yeah.
Like, he's going to go to him. He's going to go to Milner to close out the match because they know that he knows that they'll keep their head and they'll do their job and they won't get lackadaisical and not track a runner or lose someone at the back post. And so we'll get you out of here on this. We'll do our quick plug like we always do. Thank you very much for listening, for viewing, for your comments and all of your interaction. Please, if you are a fan of the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel, give us a comment, like, share, tell a friend, all that good stuff. Helps the algorithm, helps us grow. But more importantly, if you have feedback for us or you'd like to see something specific in the show, don't hesitate to drop us a message. We're always open to all of your thoughts and ideas. So as we get out of here, what is a score? What is your acceptable score based on how you're going to set up your team for this double match week?
Acceptable for myself or in general?
In general, what is your goal as you put your team together for this double match week?
$110.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit more aggressive. I think I want and need 120 to 125 points this week.
Love it.
And it's hard. It's going to require hitting, a multiple return captain. So if you're going to get 125, you got to drop 40 out of somebody. Like, someone's got to score between 15 and 20 points, and you got to have them as your captain.
Yeah.
And then I just really believe you need your defense to show up. And that's what I'm kind of hanging my hat on. And there's part of me now is really thinking I might make this Kane to Isak and Odegaard to Salah move. But then I know what'll happen is like Fernandez will go off for 25 points and like Chilwell will get 30 or something crazy. I'm
great.
A little nervous about the Chelsea defenders. Honestly, that's another reason I've kind of tempered, because I think the defense this week really does hinge around Chelsea having great match weeks.
I just like that they're at home both fixtures is all too, though.
I do too, but they concede. They just concede weak goals. And I mean, I already have Kepa, so I'm doubling on that defense.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm doubling there.
By making that extra move. So I got to really think about that one. And I think that's why in some ways, but it's like, if not, I'm doubling on me. Like, I'm still doubling on somebody.
Right.
But I hate the idea of using a free transfer to move off someone with 2 game weeks. So that, but I'm also keeping Kane against Everton. And, if we move off of Kane, he'll bag 4.
Oh,
and if you keep him, he'll blank and Everton will find a way to nick one late and Kane will get a yellow for dissent and I'll get a 1. So going to wrap it up with that. Thank you all. Great show. As always, appreciate all the feedback and all the stuff that you support the show with. Thank you, my co-host, for showing up and putting in a shift. Thanks for the insight. And just a free piece of advice. No matter what you think, don't captain a defender.
I got it now. I think I learned my lesson.
All right, everyone. Enjoy the double game week 29. We will be back next Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central. We'll review our teams, probably talk more about the mistakes we made than the good moves that we did. But hopefully, we'll have some changes in our standings. We'll see a little bit of green arrows. And all around, this was helpful. All right, everyone. Have a great night. Enjoy the match.